The stars looked peaceful through the observation window of the research station. Dr. Juan stood there with his coffee, watching the distant sun of Kepler 442b paint the darkness with soft orange light. He had been working on this station for 8 months now, studying atmospheric samples from the planet below. It was quiet work, the kind he enjoyed. Behind him, the sensors beeped softly. Nothing unusual. Nothing ever was unusual out here. Captain Doyen walked into the observation deck, his uniform crisp despite the early hour. He was a good commander, the kind who checked on his crew regularly. The station housed 47 people, scientists mostly, with a small security team. They were far from Earth, far from any conflict. Any progress on the nitrogen readings? Doyen asked. Juan shook his head. Still analyzing. The atmosphere down there is strange. Too much oxygen for a planet that size. Keep at it, Doyen said, then moved toward the tactical station where Ensign Nari was working her shift. Nari was young. Only 24, but she had good instincts. Doyen had noticed that about her. She caught things others missed. Right now she was frowning at her screen. Something wrong? Doyen asked. I'm not sure, sir, Nari said slowly. The thermal sensors keep showing these flickers, like something warm is out there, but when I check the visual feeds, there's nothing. Doyen looked at the screen. Space was cold and empty around them. No ships, no asteroids, nothing but distant stars. Probably just interference, he said. Check the sensor calibration. Nari nodded, but the frown stayed on her face. Far beyond the station, invisible to human eyes and sensors, Commander Telmore stood on the bridge of his warship. His species, the Velshara, had perfected the art of invisibility 300 years ago. Their technology bent light around their ships, their bodies, their weapons. To every other species in the galaxy, they simply did not exist until it was too late. The Velshara had used this advantage well. 47 species had fallen before them. 47 civilizations that never saw their conquerors coming. The humans would be number 48. Telmore studied the human station through his instruments. It was primitive compared to Velshara technology. The humans had faster-than-light travel, yes, but their weapons were basic. Their sensors were weak. They would be easy to defeat. All ships report ready, his second officer said. Telmore nodded his large head. The Velshara looked similar to humans in basic shape, but they were taller, thinner, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Their eyes were large and dark, adapted to seeing in multiple light spectrums. They were perfect predators. Begin the observation phase, Telmore ordered. I want to know everything about how these humans operate before we strike. 6 Velshara ships moved closer to the station, completely invisible. They had been watching the humans for weeks now, learning their routines, their weaknesses. The Velshara Council had decided that humans were too aggressive, too expansionist. Better to conquer them now, before they became a real threat. Inside the station, Dr. Juan returned to his laboratory. Something was bothering him, but he couldn't figure out what. The thermal readings that Nari had mentioned, maybe. He pulled up the sensor logs from the past 3 days and started reviewing them. There. Small temperature fluctuations in the space around the station. Nothing dramatic but consistent, like something was displacing the thin gas molecules that existed even in deep space. But that was impossible. There was nothing out there. He ran a diagnostic on the sensors. They were working perfectly. Juan stood and walked to the observation window again. He stared out at the empty space, his scientific mind working through possibilities. Equipment malfunction? No, the diagnostics were clear. Natural phenomenon? Maybe, but he had never seen anything like this in his 15 years of space research. He picked up his communicator. Captain Doyen, this is Juan. I think you should see something. 10 minutes later, Doyen and Nari stood in the laboratory, looking at the data on Juan's screens. What am I looking at? Doyen asked. Thermal anomalies, Juan explained, pointing to the graphs. Small but consistent. And look here, he brought up another screen. These are air pressure readings. In space, there should be almost no pressure, but we're getting tiny fluctuations. Could be solar wind, Doyen suggested. That's what I thought, Juan said. But the pattern is wrong. Solar wind is random. This moves in formation. Nari leaned closer to the screen. Her face had gone pale. Sir, if something is causing these readings and we can't see it, then it doesn't want to be seen, Juan finished quietly. Doyen felt a chill run down his spine. He had fought in the border wars against the Centauri rebels. He knew what it felt like when something was wrong, when danger was close. He felt it now. "Sound general alert," he ordered. Quietly, "I don't want to panic anyone, but get all security personnel armed and ready. Juan, I need you to figure out what's out there." "Captain, I don't even know if anything is out there," Juan protested. "This could all be—" The lights flickered. Just for a second, but everyone in the room felt it. The station's power was stable. It shouldn't flicker. Doyen grabbed his communicator. "Engineering, report." "Captain, we just had a power drain," the chief engineer's voice came back. "Something pulled energy from our grid, but I can't find the source." Another chill. Doyen had commanded ships and stations for 12 years. He had never heard of a power drain with no source. Outside the station, invisible to all their sensors and eyes, Commander Tailmore smiled. One of his ships had tested the human station's shields with a low-power energy beam. The shields had absorbed it easily, but now the Velshara knew exactly how strong they were. Weak. Very weak. "The humans suspect nothing," Tailmore said to his crew. "Their sensors cannot detect us. Their weapons cannot target us. In 3 of their hours we will strike. Then we will board their station and take their research. After that we will find their homeworld." His crew made sounds of approval. This would be easy, like all the others. Back on the station, Juan worked frantically at his instruments. He had pulled in Jiwon, another scientist who specialized in electromagnetic fields. Together they were trying to make sense of the impossible data. "It's like," Jiwon said slowly, "like there are ships out there, big ones, but they're not reflecting any light. They're not showing up on radar. They're just not there." "Except they are there," Juan insisted. "They're displacing space. They're creating thermal signatures. We just can't see them with normal sensors." Nari's voice came over the intercom, urgent. "Captain, we just lost contact with Supply Pod 7. It was doing a routine orbit and then— nothing." Doyen felt his blood run cold. "Battle stations, now! This is not a drill!" Alarms began to sound throughout the station. Crew members ran to their posts, some confused, some scared. Doyen stood in the command center, watching his screens, knowing something was out there. Something they couldn't see. Something that was about to attack. Dr. Juan stared at his instruments, watching the thermal readings spike. Whatever was out there, it was getting closer. Much closer, and they had no idea how to fight something invisible. The first shot came through the wall of the research lab without warning. Dr. Juan saw Jiwon fall, a burn hole through his chest, dead before he hit the floor. There had been no sound, no flash of light from outside, nothing to show where the shot came from, just death from nowhere. "Get down," Juan screamed, dropping behind a desk. More shots came through the walls, burning through metal like it was paper. Scientists screamed and ran. Some made it to the corridors. Others fell, killed by weapons they never saw. In the command center, Captain Doyen watched his station dying. Hull breaches in 3 sections. Life support failing in the East Wing. 15 crew members dead in the first 2 minutes, and he couldn't see the enemy. "Return fire," he ordered. "At what, sir?" The weapons officer shouted back. "There's nothing on sensors." Ensign Nari was working frantically at her console, pulling up every sensor type the station had. Thermal, electromagnetic, gravitational, acoustic. "Captain, the thermal readings. They're spiking in patterns. Whatever's shooting at us is creating heat." Doyen looked at her screen. She was right. Every time a shot was fired, there was a brief thermal signature. Not much, but something. "Weapons target those thermal signatures and fire," Doyen ordered. The station's defense cannons opened fire, shooting at empty space. Most shots missed, but one connected with something. There was a flash like hitting a shield, and suddenly a shape appeared for just a second before vanishing again. "We hit something," Nari shouted. More shots came from the invisible enemy. The station shook. Power conduits exploded. Doyen grabbed his communicator. "All hands abandon non-essential sections. Fall back to the core." Dr. Juan ran through corridors filled with smoke and screaming. He had grabbed his data pad with all the sensor readings. If they survived this, that data might be the key to fighting back. Behind him, he heard the sound of something moving, footsteps that weren't human. He turned a corner and ran straight into nothing, except it wasn't nothing. He bounced off something solid, something warm. He fell backward, and for just a moment he saw it. A shimmer in the air like heat rising from pavement. A shape, tall and thin, holding a weapon, then pain. A shot hit him in the shoulder, burning through muscle. Juan screamed and rolled away, stumbling down the corridor. Behind him, the invisible thing followed. Thousands of miles away on Mars, Admiral Borum received the distress signal. She was a veteran of 3 wars, a tactical genius who had never lost a major battle. But this message made no sense. Under attack by invisible enemy, she read aloud. Multiple casualties. Cannot see attackers. Require immediate assistance. Invisible? Her aide asked. That's impossible. Everything's impossible until it happens, Borum said grimly. She activated the fleet-wide communication. This is Admiral Borum to all ships in the Mars Defense Fleet. We have a first contact situation gone hostile. A research station is under attack by an unknown enemy. I need volunteers for a rescue mission. This will be dangerous. We don't know what we're facing. Lieutenant Minho was in his fighter when the call came. He was young, only 26, but he was one of the best pilots in the fleet. He didn't hesitate. Red Squadron volunteers, Admiral. Good, Borum said. Launch immediately. Maximum speed to Kepler 442b, and Minho, be ready for anything. Yes, sir. Minho and his squadron of 12 fighters launched from Mars, their engines burning hot as they accelerated toward the faster-than-light jump point. They would reach the station in 4 hours. Minho hoped it would still be there when they arrived. Back on the station, the survivors had gathered in the central core. Captain Doyen had sealed the blast doors, buying them time. 47 crew members had become 23. The others were dead or missing. Dr. Juan sat against a wall, his shoulder bandaged by the station's medic. He was still clutching his datapad. We need to understand how to see them, he said through gritted teeth. They're not truly invisible. They're bending light somehow, but they can't bend everything. Heat, sound, displaced air, we can detect those. How does that help us? Doyen asked. We can't shoot heat signatures fast enough, Nari was thinking. She remembered something from her training. Sir, when I was in the academy, they taught us about old submarine warfare. Submarines couldn't see each other underwater, so they used sonar, sound waves. Doyen looked at her. Go on. The station has proximity sensors that use acoustic detection for debris, Nari explained. What if we modified them to pulse sound continuously? The sound waves would bounce off anything solid, even if we can't see it. Juan's eyes widened. That could work. We could map their positions by the echoes. Do it, Doyen ordered. We need every advantage we can get. Outside the station, Commander Telmore was frustrated. The humans were proving harder to kill than expected. They had retreated to a fortified position, and worse, one of his ships had been damaged when the humans had somehow targeted it. How did they hit us? He demanded. They cannot see us. Unknown, Commander, his weapons officer replied. But the humans are adapting faster than predicted, Telmore growled. 47 species had fallen to the Velshara. The humans would be no different. Prepare boarding parties. We will take their station by force and kill every human inside. The invisible ships moved closer. Hatches opened that no human eye could see. Armored Velshara soldiers began crossing the gap to the station, floating through space in their invisible suits. Inside the core, the acoustic sensors came online. Nari watched her screen and gasped. The sound pulses were bouncing back, painting a picture of shapes surrounding the station. Dozens of shapes, some large like ships, some small like individual soldiers. Captain, they're boarding us, she shouted. Multiple contacts approaching the outer hull. Doyen grabbed the intercom. All security teams, hull breach incoming. Prepare to repel boarders. The station's outer wall exploded inward. Air rushed out before emergency force fields engaged. Through the breach came nothing, but the acoustic sensors showed them clearly. Figures moving through the corridors, armed and dangerous. The security team opened fire at the acoustic readings. Bullets and energy bolts filled the corridor. Some missed, but others hit invisible targets. Screams came from empty air. Purple blood splattered on the walls, appearing from nowhere. We're hitting them, one guard shouted. Keep firing. The invisible enemy returned fire. 2 guards fell, but the humans kept shooting, using the acoustic sensors to aim. For the first time, the Velshara were taking serious casualties. Commander Telmore watched in shock as his boarding party was cut down. The humans couldn't see his soldiers, but they were killing them anyway. How? Retreat, he ordered. Pull back to the ships. But it was too late. The humans had learned how to fight blind, and they were getting better at it every minute. Lieutenant Minho's squadron dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the station. His sensors showed nothing unusual. Just a damaged station in empty space. But his radar was picking up mass readings. Lots of them. Big ones. Red Squadron, something's wrong with our sensors, he said. I'm reading mass but no visual. Target the mass readings and fire. 12 fighters unleashed their missiles at empty space. The missiles, guided by radar, tracked the mass signatures. They slammed into invisible shields, and for a moment, huge ships appeared in flashes of fire before vanishing again. What the hell are we fighting? Minho's wingman shouted. I don't know, Minho replied. But whatever they are, they bleed. Keep shooting. On the station, Dr. Juan heard the sounds of space combat outside. Reinforcements had arrived. They might actually survive this. He looked at his data pad at all the readings he had collected. Captain, he said quietly, I know how to fight them. I know how to see them. Doyen knelt beside him. Tell me. They can hide from light, Juan explained. But they can't hide from everything. Sound, heat, radar, even air pressure. We can use all of it. We don't need to see them with our eyes. We have other senses, Doyen understood immediately. The aliens had made themselves invisible to one sense, but humans had 5 senses plus technology that could detect 100 more things. Broadcast everything you've learned, Doyen ordered. Send it to the fleet, to Earth, to every human ship and station. If we're at war, everyone needs to know how to fight. Outside, Commander Telmore's fleet was retreating. They had lost 2 ships and over 100 soldiers. The humans, who were supposed to be easy prey, had fought back effectively. His perfect invisibility had failed. This was impossible. This had never happened before. But as his ships fled into the darkness, Telmore knew the truth. The war with humanity had only just begun, and for the first time in 300 years the Velshara were afraid. Dr. Juan's message spread across human space like wildfire. Every ship, every station, every colony received the data. The enemy could make themselves invisible, but they couldn't hide from sound, heat, or radar. Within hours, every human military unit was adapting their tactics. On the damaged research station, Corporal Tejan led the remaining security team through the blood-stained corridors. He carried a modified scanner that showed thermal and acoustic readings on the same screen. It painted a picture of his surroundings that his eyes couldn't see. Movement ahead, he whispered to his team. 2 contacts 20 meters behind that bulkhead. His team raised their weapons. Tejan activated the corridor's fire suppression system. White foam sprayed from the ceiling, designed to smother fires in zero gravity. But it also coated everything it touched, including 2 Velshara soldiers who had been standing perfectly invisible. The aliens appeared suddenly, covered in white foam, their camouflage technology useless. Tejan's team fired immediately. The fight was over in seconds. That's 5 down, Tejan reported to Captain Doyen. The foam works perfectly. They can't hide if they're covered in something visible. Down in engineering, Suman was working on her own solution. She was the chief engineer, and she understood the station's systems better than anyone. She had rigged the air circulation to pump colored aerosol particles through the corridors. The particles were harmless to breathe but created a visible mist. Anything moving through the mist would disturb it, creating a visible trail. Another invisible enemy appeared on the security feeds as a human-shaped hole in the colored air. Guards shot it down easily. This is almost too easy now, Suman muttered to herself. Then she remembered her friends who had died in the first attack, and her jaw tightened. Let them come. We're ready now. In the medical bay, Dr. Yuna was treating the wounded. She was a psychologist, not a medical doctor. But with so many casualties, everyone was helping. As she worked, her mind was processing what had happened. Humans had adapted to fighting invisible enemies in hours. Why, how? The answer came to her as she bandaged a guard's arm. Humans had evolved as hunters on Earth. For millions of years, human ancestors had tracked animals through forests and grasslands. They didn't just use their eyes. They looked for bent grass, for disturbed earth, for the sound of breaking twigs. They followed tracks, sensed movement in peripheral vision, felt changes in air pressure. Humans were natural trackers. They had spent evolutionary ages learning to find prey that was hiding from them. An invisible enemy was just another kind of camouflage. We were made for this, Yuna said softly. Then louder, "What, Captain? I need to speak with you." 10 minutes later, Doyen was reading Yuna's quick analysis. It made sense. Humans didn't rely on just one sense. They used everything available to build a complete picture of their environment. Send this to Admiral Borum, Doyen ordered, along with our tactical updates. The more humans understand why we can do this, the better they'll fight. In space around the station, Lieutenant Minho and his squadron were hunting invisible ships. His fighter's radar showed him where they were. His thermal sensors showed him where their engines burned. His gravitational sensors detected their mass. Red 3, target the mass signature at bearing 270, Minho ordered. I don't see anything there, Red Leader, his wingman replied. Trust your instruments, not your eyes, Minho said. Fire! 2 missiles streaked toward empty space. They connected with invisible shields. Fire bloomed in the darkness, briefly outlining a massive warship before it vanished again. But now the ship was damaged. It was leaking atmosphere, and the leak was visible as a stream of frozen gas. Minho's squadron poured fire into that spot. The invisible ship exploded in a ball of fire. Splash one enemy ship, Minho reported. These things bleed when you hit them. Keep targeting mass readings. Commander Telmore was losing control of the situation. His fleet had withdrawn to a safe distance, but the humans kept finding them. Their primitive radar was tracking his ships. Their acoustic sensors were detecting his soldiers. His perfect invisibility was becoming worthless. How are they doing this? He demanded. We have destroyed 47 civilizations. None of them could see us. Why can the humans? His science officer had been studying the humans. Commander, I believe it's because of their evolutionary history. Records show they evolved as pursuit predators. They had to track fast prey across long distances. They learned to use every possible clue, not just sight. So they're persistent, Telmore growled. That doesn't explain their rapid adaptation. Sir, humans are also tool users. They create technology to extend their senses. They don't just accept their limitations, they overcome them. Telmore felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Fear. The Velshara had become too dependent on their invisibility. They had assumed it made them invincible. But the humans had found their weakness in ours. Contact the Council, Telmore ordered. Tell them we need reinforcements. Many reinforcements. On Mars, Admiral Borum was coordinating the defense of human space. Reports were coming in from multiple systems. The invisible aliens had attacked research stations, cargo ships, even a small colony. But now that humans knew how to fight them, the attacks were failing. Admiral, we're getting tactical data from 17 different engagements, her aide reported. The pattern is clear. The enemy relies entirely on invisibility. Once we can detect them, they're vulnerable. Their shields are weak, their armor is light, their tactics are predictable. Borum studied the reports. The aide was right. These aliens had put all their resources into stealth technology. They had forgotten how to fight an enemy that could see them. They've been winning too long, Borum said quietly. They forgot that winning isn't about having one advantage. It's about adapting when that advantage is taken away. She pulled up a star map showing all known alien attack sites. There was a pattern. They were all near major shipping lanes and important research locations. The aliens were trying to cripple human expansion. They're afraid of us, Borum realized. They're trying to stop us before we become a threat. That means they think we could beat them in a fair fight. She began issuing orders. The Earth Defense Fleet would mobilize. Every ship would be equipped with multi-spectrum sensors. Every soldier would train in fighting blind using instruments instead of eyes. Humanity would take the fight to the enemy. Back on the research station, Corporal Tajan had cleared the last of the alien boarders. 23 Velshara bodies lay throughout the station, their camouflage systems failing in death. They looked almost human, but taller and thinner, with strange, shimmering skin. They're not so scary when you can see them, one of his team members said. They're still dangerous, Tajan replied. Don't underestimate them. But yeah, they're beatable. Captain Doyen stood in the command center looking at the casualty list. 24 humans dead, including Dr. Jiwan and many others. But 23 had survived against an enemy that had expected total victory. Sir, Admiral Borum is requesting a full report, Nari said. Doyen nodded. Tell her that human research station Seraphim is still operational. We lost people, but we learned how to fight, and we'll teach everyone else. He looked out at the stars, knowing more battles were coming. The aliens had started this war thinking they were invisible predators. They had learned differently. Now humanity would teach them the rest of the lesson. Humans didn't just adapt. They shared what they learned. Every tactical discovery, every new sensor technique, every creative solution was being broadcast across human space. Knowledge spreading at the speed of light. The aliens could make themselves invisible, but humans could make themselves smarter, faster, more coordinated. And in a war, that might be the better advantage. Lieutenant Minho's squadron was heading back to Mars when his long-range sensors picked up something new. More mass signatures, lots of them, at the edge of the system. He zoomed in with his radar. 20 enemy ships, maybe more. Mars Command, this is Red Leader, Minho transmitted. Contact multiple enemy vessels bearing 045. They're massing for another attack. Admiral Borum's voice came back immediately. Copy that, Red Leader. Fall back to Mars. The enemy's bringing reinforcements, so are we. It's time to show them what happens when humans fight back. Minho looked at his instrument panel, at all the sensors that let him see what his eyes couldn't. The aliens thought invisibility was the ultimate weapon. They were about to learn they were wrong. The real battle was just beginning. Sergeant HFY had trained for situations like this, though he had never expected to face them. He led a special operations team of 8 soldiers, all experts in boarding actions and close combat. Now they floated in space wearing powered armor and carrying weapons designed to fight enemies they couldn't see. Magnetic anchors ready. HFY whispered into his helmet radio. On my mark. They were approaching an invisible enemy destroyer. Radar showed them exactly where it was. A solid mass in empty space. To their eyes, there was nothing but stars. But their instruments didn't lie. Mark. 8 magnetic grapples shot out, connecting with the invisible hull. The soldiers pulled themselves forward, boots locking onto metal they couldn't see. It felt strange walking on nothing, but their instruments showed them every detail of the ship's surface. Cutting through outer hull, HFY reported. Teams 2 and 3 prepare to breach. They used plasma torches to burn through the invisible armor. When the hole was big enough, they dropped through into the ship's interior. Inside, the ship wasn't invisible. They could see corridors and equipment clearly, only the outer hull was camouflaged. Sweep and clear, HFY ordered. Standard room by room. The team moved through the ship using acoustic sensors to detect movement ahead. They found the first alien crew members in what looked like a weapons control room. The aliens couldn't believe humans had boarded their ship. They died surprised. Thousands of miles away, Navigator Yunji was making a different kind of discovery. She worked on a science vessel studying gravitational phenomena. When the war started, she had realized something important. Invisible ships still had mass. Mass created gravity. Gravity distorted space-time, and her instruments could detect those distortions. Admiral Borum, she transmitted to Mars Command. I can track the entire enemy fleet through gravitational mapping. They can hide from light and radar, but they can't hide their gravitational signature. Borum's eyes widened as she reviewed Yunji's data. The navigator was right. Every enemy ship created a tiny well in spacetime. With sensitive enough instruments, you could map an entire fleet, invisible or not. Can you share this technique with the fleet? Borum asked. Already done, sir, Yunji replied. I've uploaded the detection protocols to the military network. Any ship with a gravity sensor can use it. Within hours, human ships across 3 systems were tracking invisible enemy vessels with unprecedented accuracy. The Velshara were discovering that space itself betrayed them. On a medical station near Jupiter, xenobiologist Quan was examining the first captured Velshara. The alien had been stunned by Sergeant HFY's team and brought back alive. It sat in a containment cell, shimmering skin pulsing with color changes that might be their version of emotional expression. Quan studied its biology carefully. The Velshara were humanoid but clearly evolved differently. Their bodies were efficient, elegant even. But something was missing. Their bone structure is light, Quan noted to his assistant. Their muscle density is low. They're built for speed and stealth, not strength. He examined the alien's technology. The invisibility suit was sophisticated, but the armor underneath was thin. The weapon the alien carried was powerful but light. They've specialized, Quan realized. Everything about their culture is built around not being seen. Their armor is weak because they don't expect to be hit. Their tactics are simple because they expect surprise to win battles. They've forgotten how to fight a prepared enemy. He sent his report to Admiral Borum immediately. The implications were clear. Once humans could see the Velshara, the aliens became vulnerable. They had spent 300 years relying on one advantage and had let all their other capabilities weaken. Commander Telmore received the news that one of his destroyers had been boarded and captured. The crew was dead or captured. Humans now had access to Velshara technology. How did they board us? He demanded. How did they even find the ship? Their radar, Commander, his science officer explained. And now they're using gravitational sensors too. They can detect mass, and we can't eliminate our mass without eliminating ourselves. Tailmore struck his console in frustration. Every advantage the Velshara had was being stripped away. The humans were too creative, too adaptable. They should have been easy prey like all the others. The Council demands results, his communications officer reported. They want to know when Earth will fall. Tell the Council that Earth will not fall easily, Tailmore said bitterly. Tell them we need a new strategy. The old ways don't work against these creatures. Sergeant Hyok's team had planted explosives throughout the captured destroyer. They evacuated to their transport ship and blew the charges. The enemy vessel exploded in a ball of fire that briefly illuminated its entire structure before it disintegrated. One down, Hyok reported, ready for the next target. Admiral Borum smiled grimly. Humans were learning to hunt invisible prey like their ancestors had hunted dangerous animals on ancient Earth. You tracked them, you cornered them, you struck when they felt safe. It was in human DNA. All fleet commanders, Borum transmitted across the military network. New tactical doctrine effective immediately. We don't wait for the enemy to attack. We hunt them. Use gravitational sensors to find their ships. Use radar and thermal to track their movements. When you find them, hit them hard. Show them what it means to be prey. Across human space, warships began actively searching for the invisible enemy. They used every sensor type available, creating a net that the Velshara couldn't slip through. When they found enemy vessels, they attacked without mercy. The war was changing. The Velshara had started it as invisible predators. Now they were becoming visible prey. Lieutenant Minho led his squadron on a patrol near Venus. His sensors showed 3 enemy ships trying to approach the orbital factories. They thought they were invisible. They were wrong. Red Squadron, form up for attack run, Minho ordered. Target the gravitational signatures. Fire on my mark. The squadron dove toward empty space, their missiles locked on targets they couldn't see. The missiles, guided by multiple sensor types, never missed. All 3 enemy ships exploded within seconds of each other. This is getting easier, Minho's wingman commented. Don't get cocky, Minho warned. They'll adapt too. They have to. But the Velshara were finding it hard to adapt. For 300 years they had won with the same strategy. Their entire military doctrine was built around invisibility. Their training, their tactics, their equipment. Everything assumed they would always strike first from hiding. Now that advantage was gone, and they didn't know how to fight without it. They tried stronger shields, but human weapons just hit harder. They tried jamming human sensors, but humans had too many different types to jam them all. They tried new tactics, but humans countered them within hours. The problem was that humans shared information instantly across their entire military. When one ship discovered a new detection method, every ship had it within minutes. When one squad developed a new tactic, every squad trained in it immediately. Human adaptability wasn't just individual, it was collective. On Earth, military academies were already teaching the lessons of the war. Future officers studied the first battles, learning how humans had overcome seemingly impossible odds through creativity and adaptation. Remember, instructors told their students, humans don't have natural armor, we're not the fastest or strongest species, and we can't make ourselves invisible. But we can think, we can adapt, we can work together, and that makes us the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Back in space, Sergeant Hyok's team was preparing to board another enemy ship. This one was larger, possibly a command vessel. Intelligence suggested a high-ranking officer might be aboard. This is what we trained for, Hyok told his team. An enemy that thinks invisibility makes them safe. Let's teach them differently. They launched toward the invisible mass that their sensors showed clearly. As they attached to the hull and began cutting through, Hyok thought about his training. Years of learning to fight in darkness, to track enemies through sound and vibration, to trust his instruments over his eyes. The Velshara had one trick. Humans had thousands, and they were learning new ones every day. Inside the enemy command ship, Commander Tailmore was preparing new orders when his ship shook. Alarms blared. His crew shouted reports of hull breaches, humans aboard. A security officer screamed before his communication cut off. Tailmore grabbed a weapon and prepared to defend his bridge. He activated his personal camouflage suit, becoming invisible. But he could hear the humans coming through his ship, hunting his crew. They were shouting to each other, coordinating through devices. They couldn't see him, but they were sweeping the corridors with some kind of sonic device. Hunting. Always hunting. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Tailmore understood what prey felt like. The terror of being hunted by something relentless, something that wouldn't give up. He had thought invisibility made his species perfect predators. Now he understood the truth. Humans were the predators. They always had been. And invisibility wasn't enough to hide from them. Commander Jihai stood in the weapons lab on Mars, looking at her team's latest creation. It looked simple, a missile with a warhead full of reflective paint particles. But in space, simple solutions were often the best. When it detonates near an invisible ship, she explained to Admiral Borum via video link, it releases millions of microscopic reflective particles. They stick to any surface they touch. The ship becomes coated in something that reflects light. No more invisibility. Borum smiled. How soon can we deploy these? Already in production, Admiral. We call them flashbang missiles. Every ship in the fleet will have them within 48 hours. True to her word, 2 days later, Lieutenant Minho's squadron was equipped with the new weapons. When they encountered an invisible enemy patrol, Minho fired a single flashbang missile into the middle of the formation. The missile exploded silently in space, releasing a cloud of glittering particles that spread like a silver mist. When the enemy ships flew through the cloud, the particles stuck to their hulls. Suddenly, 4 massive warships appeared, their surfaces covered in reflective paint. There you are, Minho said with satisfaction. Red Squadron, light them up. The battle was over in minutes. The enemy ships, suddenly visible and unable to hide, were destroyed by concentrated fire. The Velshara had no tactics for fighting when exposed. On Earth, Private Sang-hoon was in a briefing room with his unit when he had an idea. He was young, fresh out of basic training, but his commander had always encouraged creative thinking. Sir, Sang-hoon said, raising his hand, why are we using expensive missiles and high-tech sensors? Why not just release clouds of regular dust in combat zones? Anything moving through dust leaves a trail. The room went quiet. Then his commander started laughing. Private, that's brilliant. It's so simple, I can't believe we didn't think of it earlier. Within a week, human ships were carrying canisters of fine dust. Before engaging the enemy, they would release clouds of it. Any invisible ship moving through the dust created visible disturbances like a shark moving through water. The technique cost almost nothing and worked perfectly. The Velshara were running out of tricks. Their invisibility was being countered by expensive technology and by dust. Literal dust. It was humiliating. Chancellor Velcross, supreme leader of the Velshara Empire, refused to accept the reports from the front lines. He sat in his council chamber, surrounded by advisors who were afraid to tell him the truth. We are the Velshara, he shouted. We are invisible. We are invincible. We have conquered 47 species, Chancellor, one brave advisor said quietly. The humans are different. But the humans are prey, Velcross screamed. Send more ships. Send the entire fleet if necessary. I want Earth destroyed. The advisors exchanged worried glances but obeyed. Every Velshara warship from every conquered system began gathering for a massive assault on Earth. Thousands of ships, all invisible, all ready to attack. It would be the largest fleet the Velshara had ever assembled. Surely the humans couldn't counter that many ships even with their tricks. Commander Telmore was given command of the fleet. He had survived his ship being boarded and had barely escaped. The experience had changed him. He knew the truth that Chancellor Velcross refused to see. The humans were winning, but orders were orders. Telmore assembled the fleet and plotted a course to Earth. The journey would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare for the battle that would decide the war. Admiral Borum received intelligence about the massive enemy fleet heading toward Earth. Her staff was worried, but Borum was calm. She had been preparing for exactly this scenario. They're bringing everything they have, she told her officers. Good, we'll destroy it all at once. Begin Operation Blind Eye. For weeks, human ships had been seeding Earth's orbital space with sensors, radar nets, and particle clouds. The area around Earth was now the most heavily monitored space in human territory. Every cubic meter was mapped, scanned, and tracked. When the Velshara fleet arrived, they wouldn't be invisible. They would be swimming through a net that would reveal their every movement. Additionally, Borum ordered, deploy the gravitational minefield. Her staff looked surprised. Sir, we didn't know we had gravitational mines. We didn't until last week, Borum said with a slight smile. Commander Jihei's team worked fast. The mines detect gravitational distortions, like those created by invisible ships, and home in on them. The Velshara won't even see them coming. Earth was turning into a trap, the biggest trap humans had ever built. 3 weeks later, Commander Telmore's fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. Thousands of invisible ships all ready for battle. Telmore felt confident. Surely this many ships would overwhelm the human defenses. All ships maintain invisibility and advance, he ordered. Weapons free once we reach orbital range. The fleet moved toward Earth, silent and unseen. At least they thought they were unseen. On Earth, Admiral Borum watched her tactical display. It showed every single enemy ship, tracked by hundreds of sensors. The Velshara fleet appeared as thousands of red dots all moving directly into her trap. They came exactly where we wanted them, she said quietly. All defensive platforms, all fleet ships, all ground-based weapons. Target lock on enemy fleet. Wait for my command. The Velshara fleet entered Earth's orbital space. Suddenly, their ships began flying through dust clouds, particle fields, and sensor nets. Paint missiles exploded throughout the formation, coating ships in reflective materials. Gravitational mines activated, homing in on invisible targets. In seconds, the entire Velshara fleet became visible. Thousands of ships all lit up like Christmas trees by human countermeasures, all targeted by human weapons. Commander Telmore stared at his screens in horror. Every ship in his fleet was visible, every single one. The humans had been ready. More than ready. They had been waiting. Evasive action, he screamed. Return fire! But it was too late. Human weapons opened fire from every direction. Ships, stations, orbital platforms, even ground-based mass drivers on Earth's surface. The sky filled with fire as missiles and energy weapons converged on the Velshara fleet. Ships exploded by the dozens. The Velshara tried to fight back, but they were surrounded, outnumbered, and completely exposed. Their invisibility was useless. Their tactics were failing. They were dying. Retreat, Telmore ordered. All ships retreat. But many ships couldn't retreat. They were too damaged, too surrounded. Nearly half the Velshara fleet was destroyed in the first hour of battle. The survivors fled in panic, their perfect invisibility rendered meaningless by human ingenuity. Admiral Borum watched the enemy retreat. The Battle of Earth had been a total victory. The Velshara had brought their entire military force and humans had crushed it. Pursuit squadrons, follow them, she ordered. But don't get too far from our defensive nets. Let them run. Let them tell their leaders what happened here. Lieutenant Minho led his squadron in pursuit of fleeing enemy ships. His weapons were almost empty, but he didn't need them. The enemy was broken, running blindly, some ships colliding with each other in their panic. This is what happens, Minho said over the squadron channel. When you rely on one trick, when that trick fails, you have nothing left. Back on Earth, people celebrated in the streets. News of the victory spread across human space. Earth had been defended. The invisible enemy had been made visible and defeated. But Admiral Borum didn't celebrate. She looked at the tactical data, at the enemy ships that had escaped. There were still thousands of them scattered across the galaxy. This war isn't over, she told her staff. But we've proven something important. We've proven that humans can't be conquered by aliens who think one advantage makes them invincible. We've proven that human adaptability is our greatest weapon. She activated a fleet-wide transmission. All human forces, well done. But stay alert. The enemy is wounded, but they're still dangerous. And now we need to think about what comes next. In deep space, Commander Telmore sat in his damaged command ship, surrounded by the survivors of his fleet. He had led thousands of ships to Earth. He was returning with barely 1,000. The truth was undeniable now. The Velshara couldn't defeat the humans. Not with invisibility. Not with their current tactics. Maybe not at all. For the first time in 300 years, the Velshara faced the possibility of losing a war. And Telmore knew that Chancellor Velcross would never accept that. The Chancellor would rather see every Velshara die than admit defeat. Telmore made a decision then. A decision that would change everything. He would contact the humans. He would negotiate, because continuing this war would only lead to one outcome, the extinction of his species. The humans had made themselves perfectly clear at Earth. They could see through any invisibility. They could adapt to any challenge. And they would defend themselves with absolute determination. The age of Velshara dominance was over. A new age was beginning, and Telmore would make sure his people survived to see it. Ambassador Myung had never expected to be the first human to speak directly with the alien enemy. She was a career diplomat, experienced in negotiating trade agreements and territorial disputes between human colonies. But talking to invisible aliens who had tried to conquer Earth, that was new. She stood in a small conference room on Mars watching the communication screen. The signal was coming from deep space, from what remained of the enemy fleet. "This is Ambassador Myung of Earth," she said carefully. "We're receiving your transmission." The screen flickered, and suddenly she was looking at an alien face, tall, thin, with skin that shimmered like oil on water, large, dark eyes that seemed to see everything. This was the enemy that had killed so many humans. "I am Commander Taylor," the alien said in surprisingly clear English. "I wish to discuss terms of surrender." Myung kept her face neutral, but her heart was racing. Surrender. The word she had hoped to hear but hadn't expected so soon. "I'm listening," she said. On Earth, Admiral Borum was listening to the same transmission. She had Tactical Officer June analyzing the enemy fleet's position. The surviving Velshara ships were gathering at a point beyond the orbit of Neptune, too far for immediate attack but close enough to monitor. "They're forming a defensive formation," June reported, "not preparing for attack. They look like they're waiting." "For what?" Borum asked. "Maybe for orders from their leaders," June suggested. "Or maybe waiting to see if we'll negotiate." Borum considered the tactical situation. She could order an attack. The human fleet could reach the enemy position in a day and finish what the Battle of Earth had started. But that would mean more deaths on both sides. "Let's see what they have to say," Borum decided. "Keep weapons locked on them, but hold fire." In the conference room, Commander Telmore was explaining his species' history. The Velshara had developed invisibility technology 300 years ago. They had used it to conquer species after species, always attacking by surprise, always winning easily. "We believed invisibility made us invincible," Telmore said, and Myung could hear something in his voice. "Shame? Regret? We were wrong. You showed us that in weeks. What took us centuries to build, you defeated in weeks. Why did you attack us?" Myung asked. "Fear," Telmore admitted. "Humans expand quickly. You explore aggressively. Our council decided you would eventually threaten us, so we should conquer you first. But we underestimated you completely." Behind Telmore on the screen, another alien appeared. Younger, with different markings on his skin. He spoke quickly in his own language. "This is Subcommander Ralseth," Telmore explained. "He wants me to tell you something important." He watched the Battle of Earth from his ship. "He saw human fighters dodge our weapons, saw your missiles hit targets you couldn't even see. He said it was like watching gods fight." Ralseth spoke again, and Telmore translated. "He says Velshara warriors train their entire lives in combat, but we only know one way to fight. Humans seem to create new tactics in the middle of battle. How do you do that?" Myung thought about how to answer. "We adapt," she said simply. "When something doesn't work, we try something else. We share ideas. We learn from mistakes. We don't give up." Both aliens were quiet for a moment. Then Telmore spoke again. "Our Chancellor, Velcross, will not accept defeat. He ordered me to return with every ship to attack again, but I refused. I told my fleet that continuing this war would destroy us completely. Many ships obeyed. Some did not. They left to follow the Chancellor's orders." "Where are those ships going?" Borum's voice cut in over the communication. The Admiral had joined the call. "Chancellor Velcross is gathering them at our homeworld," Telmore said. "He plans a final assault. He would rather die than surrender to species he considers inferior." Borum and Myung exchanged glances. A final assault could mean more human casualties. But it also meant the enemy was desperate. "How many ships does he have?" Borum asked. "Perhaps 2,000, Telmore replied. "And he will use weapons we have not used yet. Weapons we kept in reserve. He will try to destroy Earth even if it costs every Velshara life." Myung leaned forward. "Commander Telmore, what do you want?" The alien commander was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired. "I want my species to survive. We were wrong to attack you. We were wrong about many things. I want to end this war before my people are extinct." "And if we help you?" Myung asked. "What then?" "Then I will tell you about the other species," Telmore said quietly. "The 47 civilizations we conquered. They're enslaved across our empire. They don't know invisibility can be defeated. But if they learned your methods," the implications hit everyone in the room at once. 47 enslaved species, all of them living under Velshara oppression because they couldn't fight invisible conquerors. If they learned what humans had discovered, they could rebel. Admiral Borum smiled grimly. Commander Telmore, I think we can help each other. But first we need to deal with your Chancellor. Over the next 3 days, something unprecedented happened. Commander Telmore provided detailed intelligence about Velshara military capabilities, ship positions, and defensive strategies. In return, humans promised to help negotiate peace and protect Velshara, who surrendered. Subcommander Ralseth was particularly helpful. He had studied human tactics during the war and understood why the Velshara were losing. You fight like water, he explained through Telmore's translation. We are rigid like stone. Water flows around stone. Water adapts to any shape. Eventually, water wins. Lieutenant Minho was chosen to lead a joint patrol with Velshara ships that had surrendered. It was strange flying alongside the enemy. His squadron kept weapons ready just in case, but the aliens made no hostile moves. This is weird, his wingman commented on a private channel. 3 days ago we were killing these guys. Wars like that sometimes, Minho replied. Fast changes. Just stay alert. They were patrolling near Saturn when they detected a group of Velshara ships that hadn't surrendered. These ones were heading toward Earth, probably planning a suicide attack. Enemy ships approaching, Minho reported. Looks like 15 contacts. Telmore's voice came over the communication channel. Those ships are loyal to the Chancellor. They will not surrender. Permission to engage? Minho looked at his tactical display. This was a test. Could humans and Velshara actually fight together? Permission granted, Admiral Borum's voice answered. All ships engage. The battle was brief but intense. The rebel Velshara ships tried using their invisibility, but both human and loyal Velshara forces could track them easily now. Working together, they destroyed all 15 ships within minutes. Good work, Commander Telmore, Borum said. Your people fought well alongside ours. Thank you, Admiral, Telmore replied. But there will be more. The Chancellor is not going to stop. He was right. Over the next week, groups of Velshara ships continued attacking human positions. All were defeated, often with help from Telmore's forces, but human casualties were mounting again. Every battle cost lives. Ambassador Myung proposed a bold plan. We need to broadcast our counter-invisibility technology to the enslaved species. If they rise up, it will force the Chancellor to fight on multiple fronts. He can't conquer us if his own empire is falling apart. Admiral Borum agreed. Dr. Chanwu, an information warfare specialist, was brought in to handle the broadcast. He was an expert in spreading information across long distances and through hostile territory. I can do it, Chanwu said confidently. We use the same communication frequencies the Velshara use to coordinate their fleets. We hijack their network and broadcast to every system they control. Do it, Borum ordered. 3 days later, the broadcast went out. In multiple languages, with simple instructions, humans shared their discovery. Invisibility could be defeated with sound, heat, radar, dust, and dozens of other simple methods. The enslaved species just had to know where to look. The response was immediate. On 47 worlds across Velshara space, rebellions erupted. Species that had lived in fear for decades suddenly had hope. They started tracking their invisible oppressors, fighting back, demanding freedom. The Velshara Empire began collapsing. Chancellor Velcross watched his empire fall apart and went mad with rage. He ordered every ship to Earth for a final attack. He would destroy the humans or die trying. 2,000 Velshara warships, the last loyal forces, began moving toward Earth. They carried the most powerful weapons the Velshara had ever made. Weapons that could crack planets. Commander Telmore contacted Admiral Borum urgently. They're coming with everything. And they have the world breakers. If those weapons hit Earth, they won't, Borum said firmly. Commander, will you fight beside us? One last time? Telmore looked at Subcommander Ralseth, who nodded. We will fight, Telmore said. Not for conquest, for survival, for a future where our species can live in peace. Admiral Borum assembled every human ship in the solar system. She also sent a message to the rebellious slaves across the galaxy. If you can spare any ships, we're about to fight the final battle. Help us end this war. The response surprised everyone. Ships from a dozen different species began arriving at Earth. Some were barely armed civilian vessels. Others were old military ships the Velshara had retired. But they came, ready to fight beside humans. The final battle was approaching. Earth would either survive or be destro. Captain Isul commanded one of Earth's newest carriers, the Indomitable. She had never expected to lead a liberation fleet, but that's exactly what Admiral Borum had asked her to do. Your mission is to help free the enslaved species, Borum had told her. Take a fleet to the nearest occupied world. Provide weapons, technology, and training. Show them how to fight back. Now Isil stood on her bridge, watching the planet Kira 4 grow larger on her screens. According to Commander Tailmore's intelligence, this world was home to a species called the Kirans. They had been enslaved by the Velshara for 80 years. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the surface, her communications officer reported. It's not in any language we know. Play it, Isil ordered. Strange sounds filled the bridge, clicks, whistles, and something that might be words. The translator AI worked frantically to decode it. Translation coming through, the officer said. They're saying, "Are you the humans? Did you really defeat the invisible ones?" Isil smiled. Tell them yes, and tell them we're here to help them do the same. The landing was peaceful. The Kirans came out to meet the humans, looking at them with what might be wonder. They were small creatures, barely 4 feet tall, with 6 limbs and large eyes. They looked fragile, but Isil knew appearances could be deceiving. A Kiran approached her, speaking through a translator device. I am Zintar. I lead the resistance against the Velshara. We received your broadcast, the message about defeating invisibility. Is it true? Can it really be done? It can, Isil confirmed, and we'll teach you how. Over the next days, human soldiers trained Kiran rebels in counter-invisibility tactics. They set up acoustic sensors around Kiran cities. They showed the rebels how to use thermal imaging. They distributed canisters of colored dust that would reveal invisible enemies. The Velshara have guards everywhere, Zintar explained, but we never knew where they were. We couldn't fight what we couldn't see. Now you can see them, Isil finished. Now you can fight. The uprising began on the 3rd day. Kiran rebels attacked Velshara installations across their world using human tactics. They released dust clouds to reveal invisible guards. They used sound to track invisible patrol ships. For the first time in 80 years, the Kirans could see their oppressors, and once they could see them, they won. The Velshara on Kira 4, accustomed to being invisible and invincible, weren't prepared for armed resistance. Within a week, the planet was free. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On world after world, enslaved species rose up. They used the methods humans had broadcast, simple, low-tech solutions that worked. The Velshara Empire was collapsing faster than anyone had imagined. Back on Earth, Dr. Chanwu was coordinating the information war. He monitored communications across Velshara space, watching their empire fall apart in real time. Admiral, you need to see this, he told Borum. We're intercepting Velshara military communications. They're panicking. They're losing dozens of worlds every day. Some of their fleets are refusing orders. The whole empire is coming apart. Borum studied the data. How long until it completely collapses? At this rate, maybe a month, maybe less. And Chancellor Velcross? Still gathering ships for his attack on Earth, Chanwu reported. He's ignoring everything else. His own empire is dying and he only cares about destroying us. Borum shook her head. Pride. He'd rather lose everything than admit humans beat him. Meanwhile, Commander Telmore was dealing with his own people's crisis. More Velshara were surrendering every day, asking for protection from angry former slaves. Telmore was coordinating refugee efforts, trying to save his people from extinction. We deserve this, Sub-Commander Ralseth said quietly as they worked. We oppressed them for centuries. Now they want revenge. Perhaps, Telmore agreed. But revenge won't help anyone. We need justice, not genocide. Ambassador Myung was working on the same problem. She had proposed an intergalactic tribunal to try Velshara leaders for their crimes. Not execution, but accountability. A chance for the enslaved species to see justice done. We need to show there's a better way, Myung argued in a conference with representatives from freed worlds. If we just kill every Velshara, we're no better than they were. But if we hold them accountable, if we build something better together, then this war means something. Not everyone agreed. Some species wanted vengeance. They wanted every Velshara dead. But Myung was persuasive, and slowly, she built a coalition for peace. On Kira 4, Captain Isul was preparing to leave. The Kirans were free and could defend themselves now. Her fleet was needed elsewhere. Zintar approached her before departure. Thank you, the small alien said. For 80 years we lived in darkness. We couldn't see our enemies. We couldn't fight. We thought we would be slaves forever. Then you taught us to see. How can we repay you? Help others, Isil said simply. There are still worlds under Velshara control. Teach them what you learned. Spread the knowledge. Freedom is contagious. Zintar nodded slowly. Yes, we will. The Indomitable left Kira 4 and headed to the next enslaved world. Behind them, Kiran ships, newly armed and trained, set out for neighboring systems to help other enslaved species. The rebellion was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. It wasn't just humans fighting the Velshara anymore. It was everyone they had ever oppressed, and they were winning. 2 weeks before Chancellor Velcross's planned final attack, something unexpected happened. A group of Velshara military commanders, led by Commander Tailmore, formally requested a trial for their crimes. We knew what we were doing was wrong. Tailmore said in a broadcast to the galaxy, we conquered innocent species. We enslaved them. We used invisibility as an excuse for cruelty. I personally led attacks that killed thousands. I should face justice for that. The broadcast shocked everyone. Enemy commanders asking to be tried for war crimes? It was unprecedented. Ambassador Mayung saw an opportunity. This is how we build peace, she told Admiral Borum. If even the enemy can admit their crimes and face justice, then we can create something better than just revenge. The first tribunal was held on neutral ground, a space station between human and former Velshara territory. Representatives from all freed species attended. Commander Tailmore stood before them and confessed his role in the conquest of 12 worlds. I cannot undo what I did, he said. I can only try to help build a better future. Punish me if you must. I will accept your judgment. The tribunal debated for 3 days. In the end, they sentenced Talmor to community service. He would spend the rest of his life helping rebuild worlds the Velshara had damaged. Your punishment is to fix what you broke, the tribunal leader said, and to teach your people how to live in peace. Talmor accepted. Other Velshara commanders followed his example, surrendering for trial. Not all received mercy. Some had committed terrible atrocities and faced harsher punishments. But the process brought a sense of justice to the freed species. As the tribunal worked, Chancellor Velcross was gathering his final fleet. He watched the broadcasts of Talmor's trial and grew even more enraged. Traitor, he screamed at his advisors. Surrendering to prey animals. Accepting judgment from slaves. I will destroy them all. His fleet was almost ready. 2,000 ships armed with weapons that could crack planets. In 1 week they would attack Earth, and this time the Chancellor promised the humans would not survive. But something the Chancellor didn't know. The galaxy wasn't afraid of him anymore. 47 species had learned the secret. Invisibility could be beaten, and they were all coming to Earth's defense. On Mars, Admiral Borum received reports of ships arriving from across the galaxy. Chiron vessels. Ships from species humans had never even met before, all coming to help defend Earth. Why? One of Borum's officers asked. Why would they travel so far to help us? Because we helped them, Borum said simply. We could have kept the secret to ourselves. We could have used it to conquer others like the Velshara did. Instead, we shared it freely. We taught everyone how to fight invisible oppressors. Now they're returning the favor. Lieutenant Minho was assigned to coordinate the Allied fleet. He had never worked with alien species before, and it was challenging. Every species had different tactics, different weapons, different ways of fighting, but they all had one thing in common. They could all track invisible enemies now. The Velshara's greatest weapon was useless against them. This is going to be interesting, Minho said as he reviewed the fleet composition. Humans, Kirans, Telvanni, Barak, and a dozen other species I can't even pronounce. All fighting together. Against an enemy that thought invisibility made them invincible, his wingman added. Yeah, this is definitely going to be interesting. The galaxy waited. In 1 week, the final battle would begin. Chancellor Velcross would bring everything he had left, and the galaxy would show him that the age of invisible tyrants was over. A new age was beginning, an age where species worked together, shared knowledge, and fought for each other's freedom. An age that humans had helped create by doing something the Velshara never had, sharing their discovery instead of hoarding it. The Battle of Earth had proved humans could fight. The liberation of 47 worlds had proved humans could lead. Now the final battle would prove something even more important. that humans could unite an entire galaxy. Professor Heeson had spent her entire career studying human evolution. She was an anthropologist more comfortable with ancient bones than modern warfare. But Admiral Boram had asked her to explain why humans had succeeded where 47 other species had failed. Now Heeson stood before a council of representatives from across the galaxy. Humans, Kirans, former Velshara, and dozens of other species, all waiting to understand what made humans different. The answer is actually quite simple, Heeson began. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on Earth. We didn't hunt with claws or speed or strength. We hunted by following prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We tracked animals across vast distances using every sense we had. She displayed images of ancient Earth on the screen behind her. Our ancestors hunted in groups. They followed footprints in mud. They listened for sounds of movement in grass. They smelled water sources where prey would drink. They watched for disturbed branches and bent leaves. They didn't need to see the animal to know where it was. A Kiran representative raised a small hand. But many species are hunters. Why are humans special? Because we never gave up, Heeson explained. A lion hunts with a burst of speed. If it fails, it stops and rests. Humans, we kept going. For hours. For days if necessary. We followed wounded prey across entire continents. We didn't stop until we succeeded. She changed the image to show human tools. And we made tools to extend our abilities. Can't see well at night? We made fire. Can't hear distant sounds? We cupped our hands around our ears. Can't reach high places? We made ladders. Every limitation we had, we found a way to overcome. General Young-ho was also presenting, though his focus was military strategy. He was a veteran of many wars and had been studying the conflict with the Velshara intensively. The enemy made a critical mistake, Young-ho told the assembled military commanders. They assumed their greatest strength couldn't be countered. They built their entire civilization around one advantage. When that advantage failed, they had nothing left. He displayed tactical data from major battles. Humans don't work that way. We use multiple tactics simultaneously. When one fails, we have 10 more ready. We adapt in real time. Watch this. He played footage from the Battle of Earth. Human ships changed formations 3 times during the fight, each time responding to enemy movements. Meanwhile, Velshara ships maintained the same tactics throughout, even as they failed. Human military doctrine emphasizes flexibility, Young-ho continued. We train soldiers to think independently, to solve problems creatively. Most species train for obedience and execution of orders. Both approaches work, but only one can adapt to the unexpected. A Velshara officer, one who had surrendered and was now working with humans, stood to speak. I have fought in many battles for my people. We were trained to follow precise tactics. When humans broke those tactics, we didn't know what to do. We expected you to be predictable. You weren't. That's what defeated us. 6 months after the final battle, the galaxy had transformed. Chancellor Velcross's last attack had been crushed by the combined fleet of 47 species, fighting alongside humans. The Chancellor himself had died in the battle, his flagship destroyed while trying to ram Earth. The Velshara who survived had surrendered. Their empire was dissolved. The enslaved species were all free. And now, something new was being built. Delegate Sora stood before the first meeting of the Galactic Council. She represented humanity in this new organization, where every free species had an equal voice. It was chaotic, noisy, and beautiful. We've learned important lessons from this war. Sora addressed the council. The Velshara believed one advantage made them superior. But true strength isn't about having the best weapon or the best technology. It's about adapting when things don't go as planned. It's about working together. It's about never giving up. A representative from the Telvanni species spoke up. Humans discovered how to defeat invisibility. You could have kept that secret. You could have used it to dominate others as the Velshara did. Why did you share it freely? Sora smiled. Because keeping secrets makes you weak. Sharing knowledge makes everyone strong. We didn't want to rule the galaxy. We wanted to survive, and we knew we'd survive better if everyone could defend themselves. The council erupted in discussion. Some species argued for revenge against the Velshara. Others wanted strict punishment. Still others advocated for complete forgiveness. It took hours to reach consensus. Finally, a compromise emerged. The Velshara would face justice for their crimes, but not extinction. They would work to rebuild what they had destroyed. And they would learn to live as equals, not conquerors. Former Commander Telmore stood before the council to speak. He looked tired but relieved. My people made terrible mistakes. We let pride and fear guide us. We thought invisibility made us better than everyone else. The humans taught us differently. They showed us that true superiority comes from growth, adaptation, and cooperation. Subcommander Ralseth, now just Ralseth, added his thoughts. I studied human tactics throughout the war. I was fascinated by how quickly you changed strategies. In Velshara military academies, we study ancient battles and memorize perfect tactics, but humans seem to invent new tactics every day. How? Lieutenant Minho, now promoted to commander, answered. We encourage our people to think creatively. In training, we present impossible scenarios and ask how to solve them. There are no wrong answers, only different approaches. That's how we learn to adapt. Admiral Borum had retired after the war, but she attended the council meeting as an observer. She watched the various species interact, arguing but working toward solutions. It reminded her of human political debates, messy, complicated, but ultimately productive. After the official meeting, she met privately with Professor Heeson and General Young-ho. They were writing a comprehensive analysis of the war for future generations. What should people remember about this? Heeson asked. What's the most important lesson? Borum thought carefully. That overspecialization is dangerous. The Velshara spent 300 years perfecting invisibility. They neglected everything else. When invisibility failed, they had no backup plan. Humans succeed because we're generalists. We're not the best at any one thing, but we're decent at everything. And we work together, Young-ho added. 47 species were conquered individually. But when they united with humans against the Velshara, we won. Unity multiplies strength. On the rebuilt research station Seraphim, Dr. Huan had returned to his original work. His shoulder had healed, though it still ached sometimes. He stood at the same observation window where the war had begun, watching the same distant sun. But everything was different now. The station housed not just humans, but researchers from a dozen species. Kieran studied atmospheric chemistry alongside humans. Reformed Velshara worked in engineering, applying their advanced technology to peaceful purposes. Dr. Huan, a young Kieran scientist, called out, "The nitrogen readings you wanted. The atmosphere on the planet below isn't strange after all. It's just a unique combination of factors we hadn't seen before." Huan smiled. "Thank you, Zintar." The young Kieran had been named after the resistance leader, carrying on a legacy of courage. Ensign Nari, now Commander Nari, commanded the station's defense force. She trained a mixed unit of humans and aliens in counter-invisibility tactics. Not because they expected another invisible enemy, but because the lesson was valuable. Never assume you've seen everything. New recruits, she told her mixed class of different species. The most important thing I can teach you is this. The universe always has surprises. Technology changes. Enemies adapt. What works today might not work tomorrow. So you need to stay flexible. Keep learning. Keep adapting. And never assume you know everything. A young human recruit raised her hand. Commander, the Velshara thought they were invisible, but we could still detect them. Does that mean there's no such thing as true invisibility? Nari smiled. Good question. Here's what I learned. Invisibility to one sense isn't invisibility to all senses. Humans have eyes, ears, touch, taste, smell. 5 biological senses. Plus we have technology that detects heat, sound, gravity, electromagnetic fields, and dozens of other things. The Velshara hid from one sense and thought that was enough. Never make that mistake. Across the galaxy, humanity's reputation was growing, not as conquerors or warriors, but as problem solvers and teachers. When species faced challenges, they asked humans for advice. When conflicts arose, they requested human mediators. Ambassador Myung found herself busier than ever, helping negotiate disputes and establish trade agreements. The galaxy was learning to work together, and humans were the glue holding it all together. Why do you think everyone trusts us? Her assistant asked one day. Because we proved we're not interested in dominating anyone, Myung replied. We had the power to rule after the war. We had the technology, the military strength, the respect, but we chose to build a council instead. We chose to make everyone equal partners. Private Sang-hoon, the soldier who had suggested using simple dust clouds to reveal invisible enemies, had become something of a celebrity. His simple solution had been taught to every species in the galaxy. Now he trained others in creative problem-solving. Don't overthink problems, he told his students. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best. The Velshara had sophisticated invisibility tech.